Juicy breast, and just kind of cut it into slices. Just cut it into slices, just like, you know how the shop sells it in slices, but that's slightly more expensive, so, like so. And then it's just easy, just bang in, bang through, bang through. It's just easy. So
what an
cut off
expert.
just a bit, like so, and just in and out.
In fact, I've got one in the oven.
Just make sure all the chicken goes in, otherwise you're not getting the maximum protein out of the meal. So I added vegetables to the chicken in order of hardness of the vegetable. So first is the onion. Also, I suspect the chicken probably absorbed some of the flavour of the onion, which will then get completely wiped out by the sauce later. But still, so now I add the peppers, which are much softer than onion, and just a bit less soft than mushroom. And finally, the mushrooms. So now I'm going to add the sauce, which today is hot tikka, which is a spicy chicken tikka. Now I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, Eddie, isn't this going to be really high in fat and saturated fat? Well, at 2.2 grams of saturated fat per 100, then that's only about 4 grams of fat for the actual, for a serving, or at least an Eddie size serving, probably less for a Daniel Lady. So I think that's an acceptable amount of risk to take. So I'm going to hold this in here. Now, Mr. Tesco hires very good food people, so they know a really good recipe. So anyone saying do it yourself are liars, okay? This is the stuff, you'll see in a bit. So your carbs are an important part of any meal, and what is quite underrated activity is weighing the carbs to make sure you get exactly the right amount. So I'm usually about 130 per meal.
Everybody's got a cooking something, and I'm good at cooking combo. Everybody's got a cooking something, and I'm good at cooking combo. In fact, I've got one in the oven. Would you like some? Not too tangy, not too sweet. It's a your saliva then sweet. Not too juicy, not too raw. Go on. Go on, give it a try. Oh, everybody.
So here we have the Eddie Rolls cereal technique, okay? So it's very important that you have a nice diverse range of cereal which will be ready for any occasion. So here we have the High GI Honey Nuts cornflake, which is for when you've got about half an hour before that dreaded morning early. Just want a bit of sugar in your bloodstream, just kind of get you ready for it. This is the kind of the medium GI fruit and fibre, and that's got two purposes. One is as a just before you go to bed, you want something fairly light, so you can face fairly light. But also, if you're just before, say, getting the minibus training, so you're about to be on the water in about an hour or so, it does contain some sugars and it will kick you up in the morning. Also, if you do have some spare oats lying around, it can be used as a substitute for the low GI food. Anyway, so the low GI is when you're not training at all and you just want some good old long-term carb energy inside you, or maybe before a minibus, but I wouldn't push it that far, to be honest. And so that's the Eddie Rolls cereal technique.
What's that? I can't quite hear. What's that? Please don't mumble. Just take a bit of my crumble.
So basically, over the summer, I've been trying to lose a bit of weight. And one of the ways of doing this is the ABC diet, which is basically anything but cake. Because cake is very tasty, but it's only really tasty because it kind of does well in the high fat, high sugar. I reckon if you just got a block of lard and added enough sugar into it, it would be tasty, but it's not actually very good for you. so I've been avoiding all cakes. However, as explained, other desserts do not fall under the umbrella of cake, and so therefore are acceptable as a high GI food, possibly after a tough session, or possibly just after a meal, because research has been done, this isn't a lie, which shows that after a meal with high protein, that it kind of lowers the GI of sugar that you have afterwards. That's a true fact there from Eddie Wills.
Everybody's got to cook it all the day, and I'm good at cooking combo.
Clearly a loaf. A loaf is not a cake.
I'm good at cooking combo.
Is a muffin a cake? Of course not. It's too small to be a cake. Who would cut slices out of a muffin? A fucking psycho. That's who would cut slices out.
In fact, I've got one.
Ice buns are clearly a bread with some high GI topping added. For example, would a slice of bread with honey on top become a cake? No, that would be a fucking honey sandwich. Ice buns clearly. Flapjacks are basically a vessel to get oats, which are a very low GI food, inside of you. Now they just happen to use honey to bind that together. Does that make it a cake? No, it makes it kind of post-growing out. A cheesecake is a pie and not a cake. Imagine if you put a cheesecake in an oven, it would melt. You'd be a fucking idiot to do that. No, it is a pie.
In fact, I've got one in the oven. Would you like some? A bit of custard, a bit of cream. It reminds you of your best dream.
These are cereals. They're vertical, just like Danny's bloody footing. So what do you mean the loaf cake?
The loaf.
The loaf.
Just talk about
Should I just say? Okay.